through the left-hand window towards the front of the vehicle, you will see that there's one building that stands out against all of the others, and that is the vehicle assembly building. From the 1950s, it was used for every single rocket launch and shuttle launch through till the retirement of the Space Shuttle program in 2011. Now that building, just to give you an idea of the size of the building, it is the largest building by volume in the United States for a single-story building, and you could actually fit the entire Empire State Building inside of that building. And that building does have 7 doors on there. If you look on the side closest to ourselves, you will see what looks like 2 grey stripes. They are 2 of the 7 doors, and them 7 doors are the largest doors in the world, and they take a total of 45 minutes to open up. Now with that vehicle assembly building, as I mentioned, every rocket from the 1950s through to 2011 and shuttle was put together in there and then sent out to the launch pad. The crane in there is actually capable of moving the components within 1/8 of an inch on there, so it's pretty precise on there. And once they'd loaded everything onto the mobile crawler, the crawler would then go down to the launch pads. The launch pads are between 3 and 6 miles, depending on which launch pad that they was using at that time. Now, even though it's only 3 to 6 miles, it would take a minimum of 8 hours to travel that 3 miles to get down to the launch pad. And a funny story that back in one of the shuttle launches was actually delayed because when they was taking the shuttle down to the launch pad, there was actually an alligator that walked in front of the shuttle, laid down on the mobile crawler runway and stayed there for over 8 hours. Now when NASA took over Cape Canaveral and Merritt Island back in the 1950s, they did agree that 70% of the land here would remain untouched for the wildlife, and that the wildlife would always have the right of way, hence the reason why they had to sit and wait. Now also on that vehicle assembly, if you notice it, I'm going to tell you where to find it when we're heading up there. But basically, as it revolves round, you will see that there is a connection end on the top. Basically what they're going to do, they're going to send solar panels up into space, first of all. Then they're going to send up what resembles a football into space, deflated. When they get up there, they're going to put the solar panels on the front, and then the ball in front of the solar panels, and that's going to expand to 9 times the size of that capsule, which means that astronauts have basically got about 10 times the space for the 9-month journey over to Mars. Now for me, one of the most crazy things is that all the astronauts that have signed up to go to Mars right now have signed up on a one-way journey. So it's potential that they won't coming back. Are they brave or are they crazy? Or are they a combination of both? So just behind me here we have the IMAX movie. Everybody stops at everything near the entrance first. That way then, doing this way, you can experience Atlantis without 200 people all clouding your views and things like that. Now, as I mentioned when we came in here today, these are the only other replicas that we have. Everything else in Kennedy Space Center is real. Now these are 3 of the components that put together to make the Space Shuttle. Everybody always says the Space Shuttle Atlantis, the Space Shuttle Endeavour, the Space Shuttle Discovery. It was actually the Orbiter Discovery, the Orbiter Atlantis, the Orbiter Endeavour. It was only a Space Shuttle when all 4 components were put together. And the reason being, the Space Orbiter was basically just that. It was an orbiter and it was a glider. It could never get off the ground without them 3 components being strapped to. Now what you used to have the 2 white ones, which was the solid rocket boosters. They would go for a total of 2 minutes before jettisoning off, splashing down into the Atlantic Ocean. They would be towed back here, they'd be cleaned up, they'd be reused. The core, the middle orange part, that was the only piece of the space shuttle that wasn't reused. That would burn up in the atmosphere on re-entry before it made it back down to Earth. That was the gas fuel. So you had the solid rockets with the solid fuel, and then the gas fuel in the core, and then you would have the space orbiter
that would strap onto there. If you look at the red arm at the top, the front wheel would sit up there, and the back of the space shuttle would sit on these two red dots at the bottom. Now, to give you an idea of size comparison, it's 284 feet high. The Statue of Liberty is 286 feet high. 2 feet difference. Do you know what happens if you take 2 feet off the Statue of Liberty?
You don't get a torch.
Nope. She'd fall over because she's no feet. You took the feet off. I know, terrible joke.
Okay.
So with the space shuttles themselves, I showed you the countdown clock on the way in there. What would happen for launch days is you used to be able to buy tickets to go to the VIP causeway. The launch days was the most amazing thing that you will ever see, if it launched. And I say if. 60% of the times it didn't launch on the first attempt. They would postpone it and postpone it and postpone it and postpone it. The one that always sticks in my mind was back in 2009, 7 seconds before launch. So the day itself of the launch day, we would pick everybody up in Orlando and Kissimmee. We'd drive over here. Everybody would get off the bus. They'd come through security here. The buses would go through another security. The buses would then come here. We'd get back on the bus after about 3 hours of being here. We'd drive over to the launch pad viewing area. We'd spend another 3 hours there. We'd count down the clock. It'd hit 0. Then we would get to see something amazing if it happened. Most of the time, as I say, the 7 seconds one, everybody would always watch that clock until it got to the last 20 seconds. Last 20 seconds, you stopped looking at that clock. You started watching the shuttle because you knew you was going to see something separate, special. 10, 9, 8, we all counted down to 0. Why is there no spark? Why is there no flame? The clock stopped at -7 seconds. Everybody was so disappointed. People used to complain, and we used to say, you're disappointed, imagine how them astronauts feel. They spent 14 days in quarantine. They got up 9 hours ago this morning. They've had to starve themselves because they had to get into launch mode. They then had to, when they scrubbed the launch, they didn't just open the hatch and get them out. They still had to sit there for another 3 to 4 hours while they drained the fuel off and made it safe for them to open them doors on there. So pretty frustrating for the astronauts too.
Lastly, spread your arms and release the panel into space.
This is launch control. T-minus 3 minutes and counting. We've completed our communications checks with the Apollo 8 astronauts in the cabin, and the communications are go.
Verify print complete on 21 bar. 21 bar, you are clear for flying.
During this period, once we do get the firing command, the various tanks within the 3 stages of Saturn V launch vehicle begin to pressurize. Do we have firing command? The firing command is in right now on the automatic sequence, T-minus 2 minutes, 20 seconds. Our status board indicates that all aspects are ready, instrument units ready, spacecraft ready, final check of the emergency detection system, that ready light also done. First stage preparations are completed.
Okay. Ready to go to contact. Standby order. Okay, you're on. All systems go.
T-minus 45 seconds and counting. First stage of the oxygen tank has been pressurized, and the pressure is still building up. Coming up on 90 seconds, tomorrow, T-minus 90 seconds and counting. Apollo 8 crew standing by, spacecraft commander Frank Warren, chin level, Bill Anders. We now report that the liquid hydrogen tank in the third stage is pressurized, 1 minute 15 seconds. Third stage propellants pressurized at this time as we come up on the 60-second mark on the flights in the morning. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. The vehicle now is completely pressurized. Coming up on power transfer shortly. We have the power transfer, and we're now on the flight batteries within the launch vehicle. Final reports coming from Frank Borman at this time. Final look at the switch list aboard the spacecraft. 20 seconds, all aspects we are still in the road at this time. T-minus 15,